Folks, the services are about to begin. If you'd like to take a seat so we can start so the Navy can do their flag presentation. Thank you.
Friends, we gathered together this afternoon to celebrate the life and to honor the memory of Stanley Rosenblum. Stanley's family so very much appreciates your presence here with them. As we know, we go through life and experience, if we're lucky, many highs, but inevitably many lows as well. And nothing is more wonderful at moments high and low than to have people around us, friends and family, to put our arms around the mourners and to express our love and respect for them. So thank you so much for being here. Adonai ma'adam v'teda ehu ben enosh v'chashvehu. O Lord, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are as a passing shadow. We come and we go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, in the evening it fades and it withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, "Return, you mortal creatures." Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted and behold the upright. They shall have peace. The author of the first of the Bible's 150 Psalms describes for us in language both poignant and succinct the nature of the good life and the fruits of that life. Happy are those who have not followed the counsel of the wicked, nor taken the path of sinners, nor joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of God is their delight, and they study that teaching day and night. They are like a tree planted beside streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, whose foliage never fades, and whose fruit always flourishes. The 23rd Psalm, one of the most famous and deservedly famous poems in any language, describes for us in realistic terms the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that often assault us. And this might lead us to a pessimism. But the psalmist, though not at all scanting those difficulties, still holds out for us the possibility of resilience, of optimism, and of hope. This is why this psalm is so remarkable. If you know it, join in with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Kohelet, who is the author of the biblical book of Ecclesiastes, reminds us that for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. When I sat with Stanley Rosenblum's energetic and adoring family this past Tuesday evening, and began our conversation by asking them to tell me about their husband and father-in-law and grandfather. They all came forth with such a profusion of responses that I had to ask them several times to slow down so that I could take it all in. And pitying the poor rabbi who was trying to write down what he was hearing, they did reduce the pace, though not the content. And from their sustained enthusiasm for the person they treasured, I came to see quite clearly that the man I was coming to understand was not only a remarkable individual, but a person who made a deep impact on all he did and on everyone he touched. So what exactly did I learn about Stanley Rosenblum? That after graduating from East Tech High School, he entered the United States Navy and served as a radio operator on a destroyer. And that after he was discharged, he took advantage of the GI Bill to enroll at Fenn College, now Cleveland State University. And after attending classes for 10 years at night, while working in the day and attending accounting classes at John Carroll University, he finally earned his degree in electrical engineering. And then for many years, Stanley worked at designing generators and antennae and sound systems. And specifically, he designed and installed the sound systems for hospitals, for Cleveland's public auditorium, and for Severance Hall. And now, friends, before I go on to describe many more of Stanley's endeavors, I have to confess that I could not discern during my conversation with the family in what order and for how long Stanley pursued all that he did. Moreover, were you simply to give me all the information that I learned about him from his family, and then you were to ask me how many individual lives it would take to do all that he did, I would certainly not have thought that this is the life of just one individual. But that's exactly what it is. And so after and along with his involvement as an engineer, Stanley worked to become a highly regarded entrepreneur in the Heights area, becoming known as the handyman, the person as an independent consultant who so many people reached out to when they had a need for both a handyman's skills as well as a handyman's integrity as a businessman. And before too long, Stanley had 35 men working for him as independent contractors. In addition, Stanley developed an in-home income tax return business. And over time, he served more than 200 clients, providing their tax returns while also offering expert advice on how to manage their financial resources. And I was told that Stanley did all of this by hand. And all the while, Stan was, along with his beloved wife of 67 years, Beth, raising his 4 children. Now, when we consider the idea of raising children, we think of the customary hours that parents and children share around the dinner table, performing household responsibilities, engaging in sports activities, and spending time together on summer vacations. Yes, Stanley's idea of raising his children included all this, but it also involved much more. And to my surprise, his children proceeded to tell me just what this much more meant. Because each of his children had to spend an entire summer with their father, learning about his business and about proper business practices to prepare them for life and so that his kids would be able to take over the business when Stanley and Beth were out of town. Specifically, he taught them how to assess the worth of a job, as well as the importance of taking messages and returning calls. And most importantly, he taught them the ethics of providing a quote and then sticking to it. In addition, he taught them how to do the many things that an accomplished adult and homeowner needed to know. How to replace toilets and doors, how to change doorknobs and install ceiling fans. You have to be handy yourselves, Stanley would tell them. And then he taught them many other life skills: how to garden, how to fish, how to play golf, and how to enjoy bird watching. Indeed, Stanley loved to share what his family described as his love of life and his knowledge about how to live a flourishing life. And he often included his nephew Matthew in these activities and these adventures. And there is more. Along the way, Stanley became computer savvy while also serving as a troop treasurer for his daughter's Girl Scout groups. And he came to their meetings and went to camp with them and proudly wore his Girl Scout badge. And it should at this point not come as a surprise that this enterprising and deeply capable person also had a robust imagination. For example, Stanley's daughter-in-law, Ellen, who, along with her husband and Stanley's son, Stephen, spoke from Chicago during my conversation with the family Tuesday night. Ellen spoke so affectionately about her father-in-law, especially about the wonderful conversations they had during long car rides. And Ellen related a particular conversation she had with Stanley during one of those rides. For at one point, after they had stopped to pay a fee at a toll booth, Stanley wondered out loud, wouldn't it be wonderful if someone invented a barcode someday so that cars wouldn't have to stop at the booths to pay their tolls? Stanley, the inventor, with an active imagination, great intellectual energy, and a fine sense of practical needs. And to boot, he even regularly cut his mother-in-law's grass and shoveled her driveway. And so when at a certain point in my conversation with his family, I asked them to give me some adjectives to describe this special person, what they told me came as no surprise. Here is what they said. Stanley was funny, kind, meticulous, bright, thoughtful, deeply practical, caring, generous, sweet, and loving. And most of all, a teacher in the most expansive sense of the word. For he taught his children about everyday skills, the skills that life requires, as well as the many sources of enjoyment and satisfaction that a well-informed and well-prepared person can derive from life. Stanley is survived by his wife of 67 years, Beth, and Stanley's children emphasized during my conversation with them how much Stanley adored you, Beth, how he put you on a pedestal and tried to give you everything you wanted, how he even accompanied you to all the baseball games you attended and all the baseball games in which you played, even though he didn't like baseball at all. Stanley wanted nothing more than to make you happy. He is also survived by his Lisa and by his sons-in-law David and Michael and his daughter-in-law Ellen, by his sisters-in-law Joanne and Pamela, and by his grandchildren Adam and Emily, Bradley and Lauren, Allison and Christopher, Mark and Jessica, Sydney, Lauren, Emily, Kayla and Matthew and Ryan, and by his great-grandchildren Anakin, Luca, Maya, Skylar, Harvey, and Noah. Stanley was predeceased by his parents, Morris and Gertrude, by his brother Harvey, by his brother-in-law Barry, and by his grandson Isaac. Stanley Rosenblum lived an extraordinarily rich life. He enjoyed a blessed marriage. He flourished in his many enterprises and interests. He raised 4 fine children and lived to see the arrival and the development of his many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Stanley's legacy lives on. Those who loved and admired him will never forget him. Zichrono livracha. The memory of Stanley Rosenblum will always be our blessing. Amen. I now want to call on several people who are going to reflect on the life, the qualities, and the accomplishments of Stanley Rosenblum. First, his daughter, Janice.
I wrote this letter July 27th, 2014, to my dad. I don't remember why, but I did. Dear Dad, things I remember from when I was younger. Dad holding my hair up when I was sick in bed, throwing up in the pot. Dad driving me to the rapid transit or bus and handing me a box of or pack of candy before I got out of the car for my trip to go to college. He always took us fishing, camping trips, including the Girl Scout camp. Long trips in the station wagon, sitting in the back of the car, because we didn't have seatbelts or anything in those days, and Dad yelling us that we're going to get a lickin'. Lots of gardening, color by numbers, learning how to ride a bike on a rocky driveway, watching storms on the porch at the house on Raymont. Dad climbing the Buckeye tree at Taylor School and throwing the Buckeyes to us. I could never remember when my birthday was, so Dad always told me when the blossoms bloom on the apple tree, that's when Janice's birthday will be. And I taught my students the same thing, and my kids. The apple trees were always in the backyards of most of the homes that we lived in. Dad built us a playhouse in the backyard on Raymont. Every Sunday we walked with Dad to Loxamandel to get bread and cookies, Estrin Hardware, and Drexler's Drugstore. Picking up my green bicycle from Schwinn with Dad, and we drove past there. It's not Schwinn anymore, but I mentioned it. Dad picking me up in the van in the back of Wiley when I was out of school. Hanging basketball backstops at Dad's customers' homes and learning how to do home repairs, including taking messages and returning calls. I told the rabbi that when he was out of town one time, I went and did home repairs for him, and I charged more than what he typically would have charged. So when he came home, that was a big laugh that we had because he said, well, you charged too much. And I said, they paid me. You're not charging enough. Camping and seeing streakers, many streakers. Pop-up campers and the hurricanes that we were in. Dad and I ate lots of lobsters together. Being Daddy's little girl. Sunday night dinners at Grandma and Grandpa's apartments. I remember their Coventry apartment, too. Dad always took us to the Taylor Road School playground because it was right around the block from us. Family dinners in the kitchen on Raymont, especially when Mom would make soup with the marrow bones and we would fight over who was going to get the marrow. Bialys bagels. Dad visited our houses a lot to play with Adam, Brad, and Allison, and Buster and Spotty. Cleaning the fish tank on Raymont. Fires in the fireplaces at all of the houses. The gerbils that we always had, Kitty and her kittens. The whole family went to the circus without me because I threw up all over the back hall. Dad renovated the third floor at the Raymond house, and I hated it for a long time because I thought I was being sent away from the family. My kids like this one. Having my mouth washed out with Dial soap because I had bad language. I was like, do it more. Dad rode lots and lots of roller coasters with us, and the rotor with me at Geauga Lake, Euclid Beach, Cedar Point, and Shady Lake, and I remember Storybook Forest. And Dad and Mom went to a party, and they brought home our dog Taffy in Dad's jacket, and I remember when he woke me up so that I could see her. So lots of hugs and kisses, Dad. I love you so much. Thank you for all the beautiful memories, and I know there are many, many more. Love you, little girl Janice.
Stanley's daughter, Karen.
Mine's not as long, I promise. Thank you for coming to commemorate my father. And a special thank you to Eliza Jennings of Chagrin Falls, Hospice of the Western Reserve. And I want to name a couple of employees that were at the facility that went above and beyond to care for my father. Jen, one of the nurses, Fantasia, an aide, Tommy, an aide, and Alyssa, an aide. Just amazing people. Dad, you were my rock. He taught me so many things, like how to ride a bike, how to fish, drive a stick shift. That's after I totaled the automatic one first. He wouldn't replace it with an automatic again. How to run a business, gardening, doing yard work, home repairs, and so much more. Dad even made one-day trips down to Cincinnati when I was in school. He built steps. I had a loft, and my loft had a ladder, and my cat couldn't climb the ladder, and he wanted her to sleep with me as she had done when I was at home. So he measured, built the steps back at home here in Beechwood. We stained them together. He drove them down, and he nailed in steps so that my cat could sleep with me on the loft. And he brought a couch down there one day, drove by himself, brought a couch, and drove back. However, the most important thing Dad taught me was how special he was. Everything Dad did for anyone was with his heart and soul. Dad was the rock of the family, always treating Mom like a queen and making sure that everyone had what they needed. I'm so grateful that I was able to spend so much time with Dad and to care for him. The time was precious. He even said, "I love you," last week to me. Mom, I will always be here for you. I will make sure that you are cared for in the same way that Dad did. I must quote my favorite author. So anybody that's ever been at bat mitzvahs for my kids, you probably heard some of these, but Winnie the Pooh is my favorite. Dad, if ever there is a tomorrow when we're not together, there is something you must always remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. But the most important thing is, even if we're apart, I'll always be with you and love you. Dad, how lucky I am to have had something that makes saying goodbye so hard. You may be gone from my sight, but you are never gone from my heart, and I will always love and miss you. Thank you.
Stanley's daughter, Lisa.
Words about my daddy. Life with our dad was so special because we created memories together that shape who I am today. From the nights he stayed up late studying for school while feeding me a bottle, to the silly time he chased me around the car with a live lobster, Our daddy always called me his baby. He took me and my friend Randy to Kings Island for a fun road trip, tried to teach me how to fish until he realized I hate fish. Brushed my long hair 100 times before bed when I was little, a task my Grandma Louise told him was important, and shared so many more meaningful moments with me. One favorite childhood memory was when my dad picked me up from the bus stop at lunchtime, took me to Mobby's at Van Aken for lunch, which he lovingly called the greasy spoon, and then brought me back to school late because I always missed the bus. The moment I treasure most was when I graduated from the SHU at The Ohio State University in the pouring rain. As I received my diploma, my dad came running down onto the field screaming, "That's my baby!" He was crying and so proud because he had finally reached his lifetime goal. All 4 of his children and his wife had earned college diplomas. Education was incredibly important to him. A slightly terrifying moment came 1 week after he met Mike, when he was summoned to the backyard patio as Mike asked for his blessing to marry his baby daughter. My dad's immediate response was, "Mike, when you know, you know. I know you and Lisa will have a long, loving life together, just like Beth and I have modeled for our kids." Thank you, Daddy. Grandpa Stan was dependable at the drop of a hat. He was always ready to babysit, act silly, and have fun. He pulled Kayla's elbow out of the socket, swinging her around in the family room, giggling, playing catch with Ryan, rode Kayla's Barbie bike down the driveway when she wouldn't ride it herself, and supported both of my kids by attending their concerts, ceremonies, dance recitals, and baseball games. Whenever he wanted to remind us or the kids to smile or behave, he would scratch his nose to make us laugh. He entertained us by wearing silly hats, sunglasses, and making funny faces, blowing up exam gloves and covering his ears after his TAVR surgery, bringing temple candy in his suit pocket to temple, acting as the voice of the friendly hanging ghost at Halloween, telling dirty jokes, throwing cigars from the catalpa trees in his yard, and eating jelly donuts with me on Sunday mornings, too far much of joy to list it all. Even in his last confused moments, when I came to visit him, he opened his eyes, looked right at me, and announced, "Ooh, you're cute." When I reminded him who I was and told him I was heading back home to Florida, he tried to get out of bed and said, "Well, I better get out of bed so I can take you to dinner before you go." The last time I saw him, just before Thanksgiving, he listened peacefully as I read all of these memories to him. A tear rolled down his left eye. I know he heard every word and knew just how special our time had been. Once, a friend asked me if I ever got annoyed listening to my dad repeat the same comments over and over and over for hours. I told my friend that I would gladly listen to that voice again, for one day that voice would be silent. Friends, that will never be true, for our final moment together ended with this short but unforgettable conversation that perfectly reflects our relationship and my dad's sweetness.
Yes, he is. I love you, Dad.
I love you too, honey.
Mwah. You get good night's sleep, okay?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. I'll see you.
Thank you all for being here for us.
And Stanley's grandson, Bradley.
So people will say, Grandpa was good at fixing things. And he was. He was smart. Grandpa was good at fixing things because he was patient at all the right times. He didn't rush to the answer. He took his time to understand the intricacies of a project or a person. And goodness knows the hours of attempting to teach me math in his kitchen table must have tested that golden resolve. But he kept showing up, calm, steady, willing to explain it again, maybe in a different way, without making you feel small or not getting it yet. And that was his gift, not just that he could figure things out, but that he could bring you along with him. Grandpa was peace. He had a way of making a room feel less loud, a way of making a problem feel less scary. A way of being present that didn't demand attention but somehow gave you space to breathe. In a world that can be impatient and sharp, he was gentle. He didn't have to prove anything. He just was consistent, grounded, dependable, decisive. And I think that's why people trusted him, not only with their broken drawers or tricky projects, but with their worries, with their questions, with the parts of life that feel messy and complicated. Grandpa didn't just fix objects. He steadied people. He made things feel possible. And if you were loved by him, you know what I mean. You felt safe. You felt seen. You felt like you could take your time. And if you want to know what mattered most to him, I think one moment says it all. At an anniversary party that we had for Grandma and Grandpa, he sat next to Grandma, looked around at his kids, his grandkids, and said, "Look at what we created, Beth. Everyone here is here because of us." That was Grandpa. He loved his family more than anything. He showed up, he guided, he did it as a team with Grandma, side by side, leading by example with love. So when I think about what we're losing, it isn't only his skills and his stories, though I will definitely miss those too. It's that steady presence. It's that quiet strength, that patience that didn't ask for credit. It's the peace that he just exuded. And I also think about what he left us, because peace like that doesn't disappear. It gets passed down. We carry it forward when we slow down for someone who's struggling, when we choose patience over irritation, when we listen long enough to understand, and when we show up again and again, because love is built that way. Grandpa Stan, thank you for being our calm in the noise. Thank you for your patience, your steadiness, and the way you made people feel safe. I love you, and I miss you deeply. I also feel lucky because not everyone gets a person like you. So our goodbye isn't only grief, it's gratitude for your love, for your example, for the life you and Grandma built together. And I hope to honor you in the way that you lived, by showing up, by loving well, by bringing peace wherever we go. I love you, Grandpa.
O God of life, amid the ceaseless tides of change which sweep away the generations, your love remains to comfort us and to give us hope. Around us are life and death, decay and renewal, the flowing rhythm that all things obey. Our life is a dance to a song that we cannot hear. Its melody courses through us for a little while, then it seems to cease. Whence the melody and whither does it go? In darkness as in light, we turn to you, the source of life and the answer to all of life's mysteries. As you are able, I invite you now to rise for the El Mole Rachamim. El Mole Rachamim, Shochem Bam Romim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kadoshim et Tahorim Kazohar HaRakia Mazirim et Nishmat Shlomo ben Moshe Shehalach LaOlamo Balarachamim Yastireo B'Sefer Kanafav LaOlamim V'Yitzror B'Tzra Chayim et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'Yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'Nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Stanley Rosenblum, our loved one who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say together, Amen. You may be seated. I want to announce that the family of Stanley Rosenblum will receive friends at the residence at the Elijah Jennings Place at 16695 Chillicothe Road. They will receive friends today, immediately following our interment ceremony, and until 8 o'clock tonight, and then tomorrow, Friday, and Sunday from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. Our service will continue at graveside now at the Mount Olive Cemetery. Once again, thank you so much for being here with the family at this time.
Approach the hearse, the coach, you look to your left, the doors open, come out here,